Well, so much for the holiday. Welcome back to the work week. Kevin Miller in the morning. KIDO Talk Radio. Joining us now is Tim Gaglen, author of American Restoration. Tim, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It's great to be with you.
Well, and not only you're an author, but you're the Vice President for External and Government Relations at Focus on the Family. What an incredible responsibility that must be, your day job when you're not talking about restoring America.
Well, may I tell you, as they say, the inbox here is never empty, and especially given the time that we're in. But I must tell you, Kevin, that in my work with Focus on the Family, I travel a lot. And across the last 2 years, to the point that you were raising, I've heard people repeatedly say, I've never been so worried or concerned about my country. Secondly, I'm especially concerned about my children and grandchildren. And third, people would say, I don't know what to do. And I thought to myself, that last part of what I'm hearing everywhere from Idaho to Maine, from Texas to Minnesota, the same refrain from people who share our worldview, I thought, you know what, I'm going to write a book that will actually address not just the problems, but what are some of the solutions? What are some of the things that we can actually do, day by day, week to week? And so our book, American Restoration, goes to the heart of what's possible.
Is it heartbreaking when you see the condition of our great nation, considering the blue-collar America, the middle class, the backbone? Not only that, economically under attack, but culturally, the shift that has happened over the past 8 to 10 years?
Well, I'm thrilled that you asked that, Kevin, because when we wrote American Restoration, the temptation was to write a kind of political book. And we said decidedly not, because if you write a political book, it's just the next one out there. What we wanted to do, to your point, was to look at American culture and what we saw among families, parents, marriages, the gamut of cultural institutions. We saw very widespread and very discouraging, difficult dysfunction and social chaos. And we said to ourselves, politics is very important. It's a branch of ethics. But culture leads. Culture is upstream. Politics is downstream. So what can we do, to restore our great nation, beginning in cultural questions? And so what American Restoration does is it says, here are, 15 great ideas about how to restore the United States of America. And we think that by, restoring our founding principles, restoring the family, restoring the Constitution, restoring the idea of a gentleman, these kind of things in culture, these are the acts of recovery, the acts of renewal.
Well, Tim, let's take a look at what has led to the country seemingly attacking itself and its institutions. What are the problems?
Well, may I say, the social and moral upheaval of the 1960s and 70s was really the first major frontal assault on all the first institutions, on families, marriages, parenting, churches, the communities and neighborhoods where we live. And it's very tempting, Kevin, to say, well, that was the 1960s and 70s. But the fact of the matter is that a kind of progressive revolution continues right up to and including the time in which we live. So I think that the seedbed of the destruction that we've seen has been on those principal institutions. And so my co-author, Craig Ostin, and I say in American Restoration that the way forward, not the way backward, but the way forward is to restore and to regenerate and to renew and to focus like a laser beam on those first institutions, not beginning here in Washington with a top-down, plan, as it were, but in the best sense from communities, churches, neighborhoods, our local institutions. There are the seedlings of restoration out in real America and where we live.
Well, does that exist anymore? I mean, one just has to look at popular culture and this antiquated thing called MTV, and you watch the awards, and they hate everybody.
Well, you know what? I'm not being clever in saying this, but I really am an irredeemable optimist. And my optimism actually is rooted in my Christianity. I believe hope is real, that discouragement and despair is a kind of sin. And I believe that the hope of restoration in an individual's life and the hope of restoration in the life of a great nation is possible. But if you have a culture that you want to survive and flourish, it cannot be severed from the religious vision out of which it arose. And so the question is, how do you reweave this connection between faith and culture, faith and public life? We say in American Restoration that they do go together, that hope and restoration is possible, even with the daily assault on all that we believe.
Indeed. So, Tim, let's talk inspiration. What is inspiring about the future of the country, considering we're getting ready for another presidential primary contest and then a general election, which tend to pretty much tell us what's wrong with everything?
Yeah, I love that question because it's very tempting to sort of believe that somehow restoration or renewal or regeneration can take a plant or root, if we can just get the politics right. And that, in my view, is looking, at the mirror backwards. I don't believe that's possible. I believe, in fact, that the kind of restoration that we're talking about is actually above politics. And we expressly in our book did not want to begin, with Donald Trump or with Hillary Clinton. We didn't want to begin with any president. What we wanted to begin by saying is that despite who is in the White House, and by the way, I want to say again, it's not that politics is unimportant. Politics is very important. But what we're talking about is the following. What kind of a country do we want 50 years from now? That's bigger than any 4-year term. It's bigger than any senator or congressman or governor. So if we're talking about restoring America's founding principles or restoring religious liberty or restoring a culture of life or marriage and social capital, restoring virtue or restoring education, it's not that politics is in the way, but we believe that this project is so important and is to begin at the local level that in one sense it doesn't supersede politics, but it's bigger than politics.
And back to our faith, is it under attack?
Absolutely, no doubt about it. But the very good news is that there are millions and millions of Americans who are very serious about their faith. They're very serious about the Judaic and the Christian tradition, which has built America. I believe with the former governor of Louisiana, Bobby Jindal, that it was not religious liberty that made America. It was, America that was born from that great idea and upon which our great nation was born. So if we are going to restore America, we have to go back to the first principles and build from there. But it's absolutely true. There is an assault, a direct one, on our faith. But I believe that our faith is stronger than that assault.
Well, let's hope so.
May I say, I'm very hopeful. And Russell Kirk, who was perhaps the greatest American philosopher, said that the conservative is concerned, first of all, for the regeneration of spirit and character. He said, with the perennial problem of the inner order of the soul. I think he's right, that the restoration of what we are seeking begins, in fact, with a spiritual renewal. It begins with a Christological sense of saying, what is possible for America? And I believe that, in fact, the greatest days for the United States of America are actually ahead. And I'm not on a fool's errand. I actually believe that, because I believe that our faith and Providence himself is stronger than the often toxic cultural currents of the time in which we live.
And Tim, finally, just a message of inspiration for people on this early Monday morning.
My word of inspiration this morning is the following. We serve an extraordinary God. Our God is sovereign. He's not asleep, and he is alive in the details of the United States of America. The whole story of America is a story of hope. We have been through incredibly tough times before and come through better as a result. And I believe that while we're in a very difficult time, that American restoration, for which this book is named, is possible, and that it begins with faith, family, and personal sacrifice. That's how we heal our nation.
Tim, we appreciate it. American Restoration. Keep up the great work at Focus on the Family.
Thank you so much. It's been great to be with you, Kevin.
God bless our great friend Tim Geoghegan joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. If you stood around the Treasure Valley, if you had a chance to check out the fireworks, two things we'll talk about. Number one, what's the deal with Chicken Dinner Road? And number two, have we had enough of the repressive, well, not oppressive, but annoying fireworks? Let's talk about it next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
I think it's classic. It needs to stay.
The name Chicken Dinner.
Oh, it's got to be Chicken Dinner. It's what it's been forever. It's tradition.
Sure seems to be a winner in Canyon County.
It's one of the most iconic roads in Idaho.
And the locals don't want it to be anything else.
Everybody kind of knows the name, cool history, and it would be a shame if somebody wanted to change that.
But the group PETA says words matter, so they asked the mayor of Caldwell to change the name with what they say is an exciting suggestion. Take off dinner, change it to Chicken Road.
I did not like it one bit.
It was jaw-dropping, actually.
It kind of caught me off guard. I went, are you kidding me? Chicken Dinner Road is like a namesake around here.
Clearly, the new idea isn't a hit among locals, especially for Greg Alger, who runs Houston Winery.
My initial response was, wow, somebody's got a lot of time on their hands.
He's capitalized off the name Chicken Dinner with hats, T-shirts, even wines named after it.
We felt the Chicken Dinner was a fanciful name, very memorable.
And to him, it's more than just a name, but the history and tale that come with it.
Well, I believe that the dinner was the piece that brought the story together.
It means so much to him, he's put the story on his wine label.
Okay, I'm sorry. This is a real news story that, in spite of, the fires caused by the lightning and the fireworks, people being annoyed by the fireworks, people being inspired by the president during the great 4th of July celebration, the crazy, wacky, zany, angry liberals mad that the president had a beautiful speech saluting our great military that they used for a wonderful recruiting tool. This is why we love Idaho. This is why people from California, Oregon, and Washington move here. This was a lead story over the holidays. Chicken Dinner Road. How dare you, PETA, attack Chicken Dinner Road? Of course, no one here knows who PETA is. PETA, many years ago, would dress people up as lettuces, wearing nothing but lettuce. Yeah, could you imagine that? In previous incarnations of this program, we've actually had a woman known as the lettuce wrap on, or she would walk naked and they'd have a dog named Naked, and all sorts of things that people, would use to stir things up. This made the Drudge Report, and you have the media people going, hey, everybody, it's national. Great. Wonderful. It shows you a slow news cycle, and it shows you really that PETA really wanted a lot of national attention. And then when they could find Mayor Nankolis, who was busy running the city. One thing about Mayor Nankolis, I've met him a couple times, most recently during a podcast with Tommy Ahlquist, the Inspire Excellence podcast. Seems like a nice guy, really working on his city like all good mayors. He's too busy running the city to make himself available for the press to defend Chicken Dinner Road, and he's right to do so. This is a big non-story. Why am I talking about it? I was just glued to everything, thinking, how dare PETA attack Chicken Dinner Road? Now, again, we could take the easy route and go, how dare they? We're going to defend it. As you see the reporter, who this is a well-written piece and lots of local interviews and such. And it's a nice, touchy-feely thing. This is why we love Idaho. Because thank goodness we don't talk about murders. Hopefully we're not talking about earthquakes. Hopefully we're not talking about bad things happening here. We're here to defend Chicken Dinner Road. PETA, Ida, Frida, Burita, whomever, don't you dare touch our Chicken Dinner Road. Now, you can say the crazy, wacky, zany, PETA-loving folks, maybe they have a point. Change it to Chicken Road. Hello, everybody. There's a backup on Chicken Road, but I'm sure the dumplings will be on their way. I know, pretty lame. However, at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, it passed the time. But just because a national group puts out a press release, do we all have to run with it? Apparently we do, because people are going to say, well, we could do this. We could do what the non-thinkers do. Hey, what do you think? Oh, should we change Chicken Dinner Road? No one's going to change Chicken Dinner Road. But this is the blessing of being here in the Gem State. This is a legitimate news story that a group from, I don't know, somewhere east of the Great River, somewhere with those East Coasters, decided, let's stir the pot with the folks in Idaho.
All of them tell the story and how Mrs. Lamb effectively lobbied the governor.
Lobbied the governor into fixing up the road, all by cooking a chicken dinner.
Before that dinner could be completed, she wanted to get a yes answer from the governor.
She's a smart young lady, Mrs. Lamb, because you know those politicians, you need to get that yes, and you need to get that yes in writing.
About having her road oiled.
And one last thing about the name change, the mayor of Caldwell can't do it since the road actually sits in the county. I did speak with a spokesperson for Canyon County earlier today, and he told me that right now it's very unlikely for the commissioners to actually take up this name change.
There we have it. Thank you, Channel 7. Yes, our friend Joe Decker, the Canyon County Public Information Officer, I'm sure he was just swirling around talking to the commissioners to make sure that everything was good to go. But how about that? PETA urging the Caldwell mayor, who can't even do it because it's a county road, to get rid of Chicken Dinner Road. And this is why, again, we love Idaho. People come here. This is a major story. Now, unfortunately, we've got some fires going on. We've got the BLM battling apparently massive fires started by lightning in eastern Idaho. But what about the fireworks? You know, we attempted to do the Kevin Miller bashes the fireworks people last week. We didn't get a lot of traction on that. But after 2 or 3 or 4 or I don't know how many nights of fireworks, are you ready to talk about that? 580-5436, 580-KIDO, Kevin Miller in the morning, traffic and weather together, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning, Dave. And coming up, we've got a lot to roll through. Kamala Harris announcing a $100 billion plan for black home ownership, tackling the racial wealth gap. The U.S. women's team wins the World Cup 2-0 over the Netherlands. Coming up, why I rooted for the Netherlands, why I rooted for England, why I rooted for anybody but Team USA. Is that being anti-patriotic? Or is it just common sense? Is it one person's view, perhaps your view, that when you love America, you don't make total, I can't even say it, total fools of yourselves? Act like you've been there. And the idea that they're demanding equal pay, well, we'll talk a little bit about that. Everything has to be political, if you notice that, with the U.S. women's team. Very polarizing group of young ladies that beat up on a bunch of countries that didn't have the resources, wealth, or training that we did. So was it really a fair fight? We'll talk about it. But this is bigger than soccer and a lesson that we can all learn. Those stories and more coming up next with me, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning, Doug. And coming up, the police are thrown out of a Starbucks in the West. Thank you, Howard Schultz, for speaking of tolerance. By the way, a couple things going on. I'm not really allowed to mention this before we go online on our digital platform known as the KIDO Talk Radio website, KIDOTalkRadio.com, or our KIDO Talk Radio app. But I don't think the suits are listening this early in the morning. We are announcing our 2019, the beginning of the Girls with the Guns. That's right, Girls with Guns 2019, brought to you by our friends at Independence Indoor Shooting, conveniently located in beautiful Meridian, Idaho. Independence Indoor Shooting, the place to shoot in the Treasure Valley. What's Girls with Guns? Very simply, You take a picture, 18 and older, please, of your favorite girl with her favorite gun, and shh, we won't tell anybody, but we're just going to let you roll with any gun that you want, because in Idaho and in Independence Indoor Shooting and KIDO Talk Radio, we love to shoot. And by the way, you can join us this Friday at Independence Indoor Shooting. That's right. To kick off Girls with Guns 2019, we're going to be live at Independence Indoor Shooting in Meridian, Idaho. Joining us now to find out what those crazy, wacky, zany Iranians are up to, Simon Owen, Fox News Radio on KIDO Talk Radio. Simon, good morning.
Good morning, Kevin.
Oh, if it only were that simple to define the Iranians as crazy, wacky, zany, but they're very shrewd, especially when it comes to announcing that they're all about the uranium lately.
Yes, and another new week and another new breach of the Iran nuclear deal. We were reporting on something along similar lines 7 days ago. This 2015 agreement on restricting Iran's nuclear activities in return for Western sanctions being lifted, but also this deal that's been in trouble since President Trump pulled the U.S. out just over a year ago. Iran's nuclear agency has announced this morning that the country has blown through a limit on how highly it is allowed to enrich uranium. And that's the second breach of the deal in as many weeks. And it puts Iran slightly closer to having bomb-grade uranium. Iran, more than that, is saying that further violations will follow it, saying the next one would be a more significant violation. They are going to chip away at this deal, they say, unless or until they get what they want from the countries that are still party to this accord. They want the European signatories to offset the economic damage that is being caused to the Iranian economy by American sanctions. And those are sanctions that were reimposed after the U.S. quit just over a year ago.
Indeed. What is the reaction initially from Europe, if any?
Well, at the moment, European countries, led by Germany actually today, are saying that they are not going to take any immediate actions. They are kicking this a little further down the road because when it comes to the Iran deal, we wait to see what the UN's nuclear watchdog has to say. Those are the inspectors who've been going in and verifying that Iran has complied with this deal up until about a week ago, that Iran has been in compliance for the 4 years that it's been in place. So the German Foreign Ministry said it's going to wait and see what happens here. But, you know, there is going to come a point if Iran continues to breach these agreement terms when it's going to be impossible, I suspect, for European countries to continue to defend this deal. But in the meantime, they are fighting to the last to keep it alive. And the French president, Emmanuel Macron, said over the weekend that he spoke with his Iranian leadership, and they have agreed that some kind of talks are going to take place, perhaps in around a week or so's time, to try and figure out a way forward. But the Iranians have been very clear on this for some time now, I mean several months, that they have said that these breaches were coming, and now they are beginning to implement those breaches. I think it's fair to say that the first two breaches, so we've had the second one today, are relatively minor. They're definitely notable and significant, but they're relatively minor in real-world terms. There's speculation out of Iran that the third one would be a bigger leap in terms of enriching the uranium more highly and quite a jump towards, it still wouldn't be bomb grade, but it would be further in that direction, and that would raise the temperature again further if the Iranians start to take greater strides towards that bomb level enrichment.
Indeed. Of course, you wonder what will be the red line or the real red line between the West and the country they used to call Persia when it comes to this nuclear material. As you said, it's not bomb grade. If it gets close, could we see perhaps the beginnings of not only tighter sanctions, but perhaps the beginning of possible military action?
Well, I mean, that's where we were before this deal was signed. And, you know, it took 10 years of negotiations to get this deal in place. But yes, the logical sort of trajectory on this, if this deal collapses, and it's not to say that it will, but that's the direction that it's heading in, then wider sanctions than even the Trump administration has imposed, and those are pretty painful sanctions, but wider sanctions would snap back into effect, and so the deal would be dead. And it would be back to the situation where Iran would be saying, we're not trying to build a bomb, we're just using it for nuclear power. But there would be significant skepticism in the West as to whether the Iranians were trying, in fact, to build a bomb. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to forget that before 2015, we were talking quite seriously about the prospect of American or Israeli military action against Iranian installations because they were suspecting that there might have been bomb-making activities going on. And as things stand, the way this is going, then, yeah, I mean, we have a U.S. president who doesn't appear keen on military action against the Iranians, but it will be talked about more seriously, I suspect, if the deal completely falls to pieces.
Simon Owen joining us live from London, Fox News Radio on KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller in the morning. Finally, we hear the sanctions have been ratcheted up. Does that include the folks in Europe, Simon? And how severe are these sanctions impacting the Iranian economy? Any thoughts?
Yeah, they're having a major impact. I mean, I think it's fair to say there's an economic crisis in Iran, and it is driven by the Trump administration's penalties. They've hammered the oil export market, which is central to any Iranian economic success. They've gone after the banking sector. Inflation's risen, prices have risen. We saw protests for a while last year about this. The Iranian economy is in a really bad way because of these American sanctions. Now, you can argue that's a good thing or a bad thing. From the Trump administration's perspective, they seem convinced that at some point the Iranians will buckle, that they will blink and they will come to the negotiating table. So far, though, despite over a year of this sanctions regime being back in place from the U.S., Iran has not come to the table, and if anything, its behavior has become more volatile and more unpredictable.
Simon, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Our great friend Simon Owen, Fox News Radio exclusively on KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM here in the Treasure Valley. Well, did you enjoy the fireworks? A lot of people did. A lot of people like myself were worried. A lot of people were worried about their little pets and their big pets. And we always have the public service announcements. Hey, keep your pets in, keep your dogs, your cats in, because you have the crazy, wacky, zany, and I will dare say inconsiderate people lighting off their fireworks. And I know, like my lack of appreciation for the pickup truck, this is where a lot of us agree to disagree. But at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, do we really need to be shooting off all these massive amounts of fireworks? Channel 7?
We provided some of those specific numbers for you earlier, but we didn't mention a total. When you add all the firework-related fires up in Boise, Nampa, and Meridian, there were approximately 15 across the area confirmed, and 10 more that are suspected of being related to fireworks. We showed you a house fire that happened earlier this morning in Nampa. Fireworks were thrown in the trash and then pulled into the garage overnight. The used fireworks smoldered for hours and built up heat, causing the garage to catch fire. The garage was burned, and the rest of the house now has smoke damage. Boise also had their fair share of fires in the trash. 6 dumpsters, to be specific. Boise Fire said they were also likely caused by the improper disposal of fireworks. I talked to Chief Gervais with Boise Fire today about how to safely dispose your fireworks after they're used.
So what we really recommend people doing is letting those cool down and then making sure they're saturated with water, either with a garden hose or actually putting them into a metal bucket filled with water and just letting them soak. The big thing is that even after that, what we certainly recommend is that people, if they do put them in their trash can, that trash can is away from the house, or leaving just the fireworks out to kind of cool overnight and then picking them up and putting them away the next day.
Now, again, you're not going to hear stories like this in California. You're not going to hear about this in Portland, where they're beating up reporters who happen to be conservative, or in, well, who knows what's going on in Seattle. But this is, again, welcome to Idaho, everybody, if you're listening on the KIDO Talk Radio app, or as we love 580, Idaho's first radio station, our flagship, and our newest affiliate, 107.5 FM, FM Talk on the radio. Who would have ever thought? But this is Idaho. Our first big story, PETA attacks Chicken Dinner Road. Our second big story, don't put smoldering fireworks in the trash. How about a third one? Let's be considerate of others.
So here are some stats that officials have received over the last few days. Ada County officials tell us they received 303 calls reporting the use of illegal fireworks between July 3rd and today at 10 a.m. In Boise, fire crews responded to 18 fires. Only 3 of those are confirmed to be fireworks related, while 11 of the fires are suspected to be fireworks related.
Now remember, Chief Doan said he was going after people and he was going to prosecute people that if you burn down somebody's house. So 303 calls. 253 calls came in between the 4th of July and Friday morning. I don't know about your place, but they were shooting off fireworks yesterday afternoon in Star. And you think to yourself, what does this have to do with celebrating America? What it has to do is your independence to being considerate of others. That is my opinion. Yours is welcome. Equal or more time at 580-5436. 580-KIDO. Let's go to Pete. Mountain to Home, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Pete.
Kevin, this is just a great show this morning on KIDO. I just love it. Chicken dinner and fireworks in Iran. And Chicken Dinner Road, I have 2 recommendations there. One, I recommend that the folks that own the Chick-fil-A restaurants put up some Eat More Chicken signs on Chicken Dinner Road. I can remember, 10 or 20 years ago, there was a group called People Eating Tasty Animals.
I remember that, yeah.
That got the PETA organization, the name registered in their name, and it cost the PETA fruitcakes, I think, $500,000 or more to get that back. But I think People Eating Tasty Animals is a good name. The fireworks thing, it's like, what is it? The fire department had to rescue 35 people out of the Boise River this weekend. It's really hard to fix stupid, Kevin.
Sure.
It's very, very difficult. And if you make something idiot-proof, they're just going to invent a better idiot. I don't know exactly how you cure the fireworks thing. I know the way I celebrate the 4th is I go out to my friendly local gravel pit and sight in a firearm because I think that's more appropriate for Independence Day anyway.
Right.
And finally, Iran. The Iran deal from Obama basically guaranteed Iran would have a nuclear weapon within 10 years. All he did was he got a 10-year delay, and he gave them a whole bunch of money to help them develop that and to support terrorism. And when they do develop a nuclear weapon, they will use it on America or on Israel. They have promised to do that. And I think that what Trump is trying to do is basically have that economy collapse to the point where the people of Iran have finally had it with their dictators there, and they get rid of them. But the other thing that Trump is doing is if he can cripple their economy enough, maybe they can't afford to build a nuclear weapon because that's kind of pricey. And all this yap about how, they wouldn't be doing this if he hadn't backed out of the nuclear accord. Sure they would. They weren't following that accord. They were doing it in secret. Now they're just coming out and say, yeah, we're doing it. And what is it that they say over there all the time? Death to America? They mean that.
Death to America, the great Satan. 2 more follow-ups with Pete from Mountain Home on KIDO Talk Radio. Number 1, did you catch the president's salute to America?
Oh, yeah, that was great. That was absolutely great. And that's, there's a tradition of doing that goes back into the 1930s. Parades with the military, and did you didn't see the pictures on the news of the crowd that turned out, but you can see it on websites on the internet that the entire mall was full of people that loved it.
And it was rainy, it was miserable, but the president hit it out of the park. And Pete, let's just say shame on the entire local, state, especially national media that called it controversial. They're just plain
they are
misguided.
Well, I'm gonna go along with the president. I think that New York Times and that whole group, they're the enemy of the people. They don't like the people. They are members of the self-anointed elites, and they think the rest of us really are deplorables. And I would also like to point out when President Trump was standing out there giving a speech and getting rained on, he was not like Obama with a Marine standing behind him holding an umbrella over his head while the Marine got soaked.
You're right. The First Lady got soaked. The Pences got soaked. All the people got soaked.
And I'll tell you what, man, when the Blue Angels went over, the crowd roared. They loved it.
They could have worked on the camera angles a little bit better. But besides that, you're right. I kept Kept going to Mrs. Miller. Somebody call the Blue Angels. Blue Angels, we're running out of verses of Battle Hymn of the Republic.
Yeah. Yeah. And here in Mountain Home on the 4th, we had a flyover by a couple of the Warthogs, and I want to thank the Air Guard from Gowan Field. Those guys are so cool.
Boy, that is so inspiring when you get those flyovers, Pete.
Oh man, they are just. And speaking as like an ex-Army guy, Warthogs. I mean, that's the way to go, man. 30 millimeter Gatling gun. You know, how could you get better air support?
You know, that is our mission, is to continue to save those planes. Pete, God bless.
God bless you, Kevin, and thank you for a really, really entertaining morning.
Well, we're going to try and keep up the momentum, brother.
Go for it.
Thank you, Pete. Our great friend Pete from Mountain Home. You know, we have to go see our friends at DeMeyer Furniture in Mountain Home. Hopefully we can talk them into taking the show there so we can meet Pete and everybody in Mountain Home. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. So we've got Chicken Dinner Road being attacked by the National Liberal wacko PETA. We've got the fireworks where you have a bunch of people, in my opinion, inconsiderate, blowing up everything, and in some cases starting fires unintentionally. And the hypocrisy of the Idaho law where you can buy fireworks, but you have to sign something saying you're not going to use them. Really? And then this issue involving, well, the crazy, wacky, zany and Iranians. Is war on the horizon? Much more coming up next. Starbucks versus the cops. Let's get your reaction before Dave Petzo. Kevin Miller on your home for Hannity, KIDO Talk Radio. Rolling on the right side, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Liberal Steve joins us now for a quick hit. Good morning.
Good morning, America. Listening to 580 KIDO on the electronic waves of America. Miller, can we talk serious for a second?
Got a hard break coming up, so all the time is yours.
Okay. If Mr. Kevin Miller had sexual intercourse with, let's just say, 2 14-year-old females, and he was caught and found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt here in the state of Idaho, how much time do you think Kevin Miller would do behind iron bars?
20 to life.
There you go. But if you're a billionaire like Epstein, you don't do any time except what you already served and a little time in jail. What was it, 6 months? Then he comes back from Paris and arrested again, and they raid his home and his computers and everything else. Why do you think he got such little time the first time? As a thinking adult, why do you think he got away with
He was buddies with Clinton and Obama.
And your president.
He wasn't in power. He wasn't in power then. By the way, I want to thank you very much for sticking to the topics that we talked about. That's very considerate of you this morning.
Well, I was going to talk about the cops in Starbucks, but I thought they were very polite to get up and leave rather than create a scene.
Well, maybe you could take a lesson from them.
Well, maybe you could take a lesson and stop interrupting me when I'm trying to get facts across.
I'm sorry, we're out of time. We're out of time.
Talk to Dave about the truckers going broke in America.
Fair enough. Your wish is my command, Liberal Steve. Kevin Miller in the morning, traffic and weather together. Good morning, Dave.